What's up? I'm Ayla.
Hi, I'm Beth Ann.
And this is Let's Talk BL, a Boys Love podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast. We have a fun topic for you today.
You sound very enthused.
It's because I can't wrap my mind around all of the information that I have digested in the last 24 hours, because it's funny because we talk about this often, how BL time makes no sense.
Right.
And how our lives have become BL, and for us to just talk about just looking at the content that I've consumed over the last year, basically.
There's so much. None of it really makes sense. I found all of my assumptions about these different shows and their popularity, at least in terms of view count, was wrong.
Oh, interesting.
So anyways, today we are talking about quote unquote least popular BLs, right? So do view counts matter?
Yeah.
Should you pay attention to view counts? What is an underrated BL? Because you hear this conversation all the time about this show is so underrated.
Go watch season 1 episode something
with Tara, right?
Yeah.
We talk about this with Tara, and you hear this conversation all the time, and even we throw it around. We'll be like, oh, most underrated show ever, right? But what does underrated mean? Does it mean people aren't watching it? Does it mean people are saying
talking about it?
Does it mean they're not talking about it? Does it mean people don't like it but they should? Right? What does underrated mean? And so the question is, do view counts, because underrated typically will mean either people perceive it as less than a lower quality than it actually is.
Okay.
Or underrated means people just don't know about it, right?
Or we don't talk about it enough.
Right. So how much do view counts play into this? And it's just really interesting to look and see what is in the conversation.
Yeah.
And again, I think we've discovered it also has to do with the group of fans you are in, because there are segments of this BL audience,
right?
And you kind of you see what's on your timeline, you see what's in your Discord server, you see what's on the Instagram accounts that you follow.
Right.
And so it's it's all very interesting.
I know, because this happens with us a lot too, where we go back and talk about kind of the same thing over and over again. And I'll ask you, I'm like, oh, have you even seen that? And you're like, yeah, I watched it. And it's something that we don't talk about. And I'm like, but I love that show. And why don't we talk about that more? So that's part of it too. It's the conversation, we're dealing with this right now, right? Where it's the conversation is still about Bad Buddy, and rightly so. It was a very, very good show, but you have a You're My Sky that comes along, and it deserves the attention and the acclaim that it will absolutely get one day. And
I love that it always comes back to You're My Sky.
Just wait till Summer Days comes out, and then it'll be back.
Then it's all about Summer Days. It's so funny. I literally was waiting for the moment for the words "You're My Sky" to come out of one of our mouths, because I saw you in my periffs when we were doing the intro, and I was like, "Sir,
is You're My Sky the new ingredients?" Because we used to champion ingredients.
We did
when we first.
We always have a pet project.
We do. And then it became the moment I need you and the moment since.
I still champion the moment I need you, because I still don't understand why people have never heard of it.
Okay, here's the thing though, in the grand scheme. So when we were doing the research, we looked on YouTube exclusively, because obviously
it's the most accessible.
You can't get view counts of other
right. It's also the most accessible. When you start watching BLs, you're not going to go at least at first to the trouble of figuring out all the different platforms and this and that. You're going to go to the YouTube playlist.
But here's the
100%.
thing, is that the moment I need you and the moment since are not the bottom of the barrel when it comes to view counts on YouTube.
Right. But no one talks about them. And I feel like every time I bring up those shows, that series, people are like, wait, what? No, I get one of two responses. I either get, who's in that? I don't what is that? Or I get, oh my God, you're so right.
Right. And I think the other part of this conversation too is that there's such a difference in international fan conversation and Thai fan conversation and just Asian fan conversation that we don't obviously understand. And how that dominates these view counts.
Right.
Like, for example, Together.
Okay, let's start with the top of the top. Let's just to start with Together. So
Yeah.
obviously Together. So the idea for this episode actually came from a graphic that I saw. It was like a moving graphic. It was a motion graphic.
Fancy.
And it showed
One day
the progression of Together in terms of view count, but this was across Line. So like because Line TV, you used to be able to see view counts.
Right.
So like this was across Line, but it showed the progression of like after when Together came out, how it just like dominated and just like fully eclipsed every other show that came out that year. Like
I want
not
a
just
docuseries on Together.
like not just more, but like eclipsed, like crazy stuff. And I was like,
because you didn't even get that with Bad Buddy. Like Bad Buddy was like nothing,
and that was just like it's crazy to watch. And so Together, obviously the highest viewed, and I say obviously, I feel like everyone knows this, but it almost doesn't make sense.
No, it fully doesn't make
sense.
sense.
Because here's the thing.
If you're watching right now, explain to us why.
Well, no, here's my question with Together is that, and we were talking about this a little bit pre-recording, is that so it has 25 million views on YouTube, which is crazy.
The first episode alone. Yeah.
Right. The first episode alone has 25 million views on YouTube. That's insane.
Yeah.
But I hear all the time from people, oh, I'm going to go back and rewatch SOTUS. Or like, I'm one of those people where I go back and I rewatch Dark Blue Kiss all the time.
Yeah.
Or like, I hear from a lot of people, I know a ton of people that go and rewatch Tale of 1,000 Stars.
Yeah.
So like, when you're thinking about view counts and overall numbers, sure, a lot of those series, a lot of these series and these shows are rewatchers, rewatches. But I have not met one single person in my BL travels across the internet that rewatches Together.
No.
Which is crazy. And it's not shade. Like, I'm not being shady to Together. What I'm saying is those are unique viewers.
Do you think that it's the safest show for a certain demographic of viewers to rewatch? Because,
what do you mean?
Because if you're into BLs and you're living at home, if you're a younger viewer, it's safer for you. It's like the gym conundrum, right? Where you're like, can I watch this at the gym?
Yeah. So
like,
yes, that is my test of a BL. I will frequently go into the Discord and I will say, I'm watching the show right now. Can I watch it at the gym? Because I'll put it on the treadmill, whatever, and like do my thing.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, maybe.
So, like, if you're younger and you're into BLs or, like, you're trying to be like, hey, mom and dad, can I watch these shows? You show them Together and they're like, yeah, go for it.
Right. Together. Although
I feel like they have a younger crowd of fans, like, from what I've, like, feel like I've seen online.
Maybe. But when I think about the content of Together, you're right in that it's not spicy per se. Like, it's not a spicy BL.
No.
Obviously, like we all joke about the high five. But I mean, the content is somewhat questionable in that there's like a lot of physical violence in that show.
Right.
There's a lot of physical violence in that show.
Now thinking back to it, GMMTV does have a fighting trope and has always had a fighting trope.
So there's a lot of physical violence in Together. And then there's also like a college kid and a high school kid, which is like not, I feel like if I were a parent, I don't know that I'd be down with that.
Yeah. It's been so long since I've watched Together, so I can't even tell you.
See, and that's the other thing that's crazy is like, I only watched Together once.
Yeah.
I only did it once, and I did it very, very early on in my like BL career. Right. And I actually, when I watched it, I was like, I really like Bright. Mm-hmm. Like, I liked Brightwin. I liked the show. Right. I liked it. But like, I vividly remember the plot points, and like I remember the friends, and like I freely am telling you like, no, but he did this and he did that, and like I have a favorite scene in the show.
I only remember Green from that show.
See, he's like my least memorable character in the show
because I feel like he has like the most personality of all of them.
Yeah,
I like vaguely. Top Tap was one of my first like BL boys that I fell head first into, like turned on notifications on Instagram for, and I barely remember his character. Like I forget that he's in that show.
But so here's like the big question is, do view counts matter?
No.
When you are looking at a show to watch or rewatch, do the view counts matter? In Together's case, like I'm going to say no. Like my vote on that one is no. The view count I don't think is an accurate representation of like the quality of the show. Not that it's a bad show. Again, I'm not shading Together. Like it's not about that. I like Together. I have a favorite scene. I have a favorite character. Like I remember the details.
Here's the thing. It doesn't matter as far as like what shows you should be watching, but when I was doing research for this, the way that I found a lot of these shows and like just in my research was like I searched BL series Ep1 on YouTube, and then I sorted them because you can only sort them by popularity from highest to lowest. So if you're a new BL fan and you're going to YouTube and typing in BL series,
right?
Part 1 of Ep1 of Together is coming up.
But should that impact the question is should you take that view count into account when you're saying, okay, yes, I'm going to watch that?
I think maybe that's why people do watch it, because they're so confused. They're like, this is like, there's nothing groundbreaking there, right?
I feel like I'm going to say, and I think it's going to be different for every show we talk about on some level.
Yeah.
But like ultimately, like my answer to the question for Together is like, is the view count representative of the quality of the show? I would say no.
No. Yeah. I think that's true generally of a lot of things.
And again, like no shade, but like, yeah, if I were a new BL fan, and I was like not that long ago, I was looking at what are the most popular, what are other people watching?
Right.
And I think the answer, at least in Together's case, is like actually it shouldn't matter. Like you shouldn't be looking at it from like that point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, because one of Ayla's favorite BLs of all time, the bottom of the list for GMMTV is He's Coming to Me.
And so like when we were talking about this, when you were researching, you asked me, you were like, what do you think is the lowest?
Yeah.
And I like threw out a few guesses, and none of them were He's Coming to Me, because He's Coming to Me is so beloved to me personally. And everyone I know except for you is like rabid for He's Coming to Me.
Yeah.
Like every single one of my BL friends except for you, like you are the, like you're the exception to the rule in this case.
Right.
Is like truly like He's Coming to Me is one of their like god tier BLs, like top of, like if they're going to give somebody a list of 3 BLs to watch, He's Coming to Me is on it, right? And so like for me, and this is where like the whole like it depends on which group of fans you're in, truly. I was like, of course He's Coming to Me has tons of views, like blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't. And the more I thought about it, I was like, no, that makes sense, because He's Coming to Me evidently did really well in Thailand when it was on TV, but it didn't get added to YouTube until super late. And like nobody was really talking about it anymore.
Yeah.
And like also like and Singto weren't really a ship. It was like when they did ship work, like Christ was involved, which is like, I'm sure very strange.
Right.
If you're like a ship consumer.
Right.
And so like I get it. I get the view count being low, but again, it just blows my mind, because like it's so good. Like I personally think it's so good, and everyone I know thinks it's so good.
Well, and the interesting part too is if you think about just like BL time again in the last however long it's existed, let's say 5 years, because like the significant BLs that we talk about still today are kind of within a 5-year range, right? Like Soda's had its 5 years this year. So if you think about the culture of BLs and how drastically it has changed in the last 5 years, with the fact that we talk more about the behind the scenes, this go round, I feel like P-Off got more attention.
He sure did, yeah. And people were like, P-Off.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because you didn't get that with the Tale of a Thousand Stars, right? Where it's like,
I feel like I did. I heard a lot of people talking about P-Off with Tale of a Thousand Stars.
I feel like not, but they didn't push it, at least on the GMMTV side so much.
Because I remember like the first thing I heard about A Tale of a Thousand Stars was the director of this show is amazing.
Yeah.
He let them
Yeah.
right? Like, he really let them drive the characters, and he took them to this awesome location, and, like,
Mhm.
the director of this show really did cool things with this
Right.
show, and so you should watch it. Like, that was the narrative I heard about
But
A
did
Tale
you
of a
hear his
Thousand Stars.
name, or you
Yeah.
just heard, like, the director?
No, I mean, like, people were calling him Piaf, but, like,
Okay.
it was about the behind the scenes. It was like,
Right.
Piaf, the director, did this, like, crazy,
Right.
amazing thing, and, like,
Right.
he's so cool, and Piaf said this, and Piaf did that,
Right.
and when Piaf set up the kiss, and they weren't even supposed to, and, like, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah,
yeah,
blah, right?
yeah.
Like,
I know, and but I feel like the culture of BLs, at least from our point of view, right? Again, because like we're international fans, like this is what our viewpoint is. When I first got into it, Mugolf was dominating the conversation. All you could find online was about ships and like all that kind of stuff and that kind of cultural stuff. And now I feel like the grand scheme of things, because you had an Itze and I Promised You the Moon come in, and people more so talking about the process of it and the behind the scenes and like all that kind of stuff. So we moved away from like exclusively the ship culture, which I feel like is what drives some of those early shows like A Together, where like a Brightwin, I feel like really drove the popularity of Together.
which is
But
interesting because Piaf directed Together.
I know.
And also, it's
Yeah.
interesting that you say this because, like, I actually don't get the same impression.
But and to your point, because Singto and were not weren't a ship that like pushed the show. Like
Right.
they weren't because it came out on YouTube later and like whatever. So like as if you're driven, depending on what you're driven by, you're not searching Omen Singto.
Right, right.
Right?
Yeah, but so, like, it's very, and it reminds me of when we talked to Omen Nanan.
Mm-hmm.
He's Coming to Me got brought up. I think you actually like called me out on it a little bit
Yeah.
because like I totally had this moment with Ohm because I like Ohm so much.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I kind
yeah.
of I have since He's Coming to Me, right? Like
Yeah.
I watched He's Coming
Yeah.
to Me and I was like,
Honestly, I was late to the Ohm train. I think he's beautiful, but like I didn't get it.
I watched He's Coming to Me and like he was like pretty adorable the whole like throughout the whole
Yeah.
thing. But when he has that rooftop scene, Ohm and the Rooftops.
Yeah.
When he has that rooftop scene where he's basically fighting with himself and
Yeah.
like he's sobbing and like honestly like that's where this thing where I was like Ohm Pawat moves me because like he made me feel things
Yeah.
like emotional things like my heart broke and so I just like had a very hard time with that interview because I admire Ohm so much.
Yeah.
Like, I think that he is so talented and I just think he's so cool. I just like him a lot, like, as a person, as an actor.
Yeah.
And I think you were the one that brought up I think you kind of threw me
Yeah, I
under the bus
did.
a little bit, and I think you were like, "Oh, Ayla really loves or something like that." And he was, like, a little bit shocked.
Yeah.
Like, he was a
Yeah.
little bit surprised, and it took him a second because, of course, He's Coming to Me is the English title, and He's Coming to Me has a Thai title.
Right.
And so it took him a second to, realize what it was we were saying.
Right.
And he was like genuinely a little bit surprised
Yeah.
that uh, that I would like He's Coming to Me.
Yeah.
And later on he like brought it up again and he was like, well, He's Coming to Me, blah blah blah, and it was like a part of one of his answers. And in that moment I was like, it didn't occur to me until way later that I was like, oh, he's shocked because international fans did not watch He's Coming to Me.
Mm.
Like, it did really well in Thailand, but like the international market just did not watch this show.
Yeah. I also don't have a habit of looking through the comments on these shows and or making comments. So that too could be another part of the conversation of like, what is the conversation about the show?
Oh, I never read comments
on
anything I
YouTube
consume.
comments.
If I'm watching like K-pop videos, I don't read the comments. Like, I read no comments on YouTube.
I was really bad about even liking Instagram photos. Like, I don't interact with stuff that much. But so it is interesting in the grand scheme of the GMMTV stuff, the view counts as far as what you should watch it in what order. Honestly,
I don't think it matches.
It doesn't match and it doesn't matter. For me, it never matters because I will watch anything and everything, honestly. I almost love like the small one-off things, which is how I found like an ingredients. Like if it is suggested for me in YouTube, which is kind of how I stumble upon the craziest things, I will fully watch something just because I'm like, what is this? Yeah. Maybe it's something that like I need to like pay attention to these actors.
I will say some of these view counts for GMMTV, and then we'll move on to other BLs. Yeah. Make sense to me. So like these are the two, I would say like Together and He's Coming to Me in terms of view counts are the two like polar ends of the spectrum, in that like one is the highest and one is the lowest. And I think that their view count is absolutely not indicative of their quality. Right. I personally think they should be flipped. That's not true. I think Dark Blue Kiss deserves the top spot. But 100%. Like He's Coming to Me comes in a hot number 2.
Yeah.
But everything else in the middle actually makes sense to me. And I think, and this is where I would say pay attention to the view counts, because I actually do think it's like in a pretty close to right order.
I'll also be interested to see where these view counts are a year or 2 years from now, because with new shows coming out, so like for example, Earth has a bunch of shows coming out, and so it'll be interesting to see if people really deep dive into his history, or if
we're just weird. I don't think other people do that, right? Like, I mean, again, like it all comes back to You're My Sky. Like normal people, Beth Ann, normal people that are not you and I,
aren't deep diving,
aren't finding Porsche's like Harlem Shakes
YouTube video,
right, from like 4 years ago. They did with his little brother.
That's
right.
That's how we ended up doing this podcast, anyways. Is because like I grew up loving pop culture, and so like I was that person that when I found an actor, like I talked about this recently, where I was like, when I got into The Office and John Krasinski, I literally watched everything John Krasinski was in, which is not favorable. Like his movies were insane. And the same thing with like really random actors. And so that's kind of my process where I'm
I've always been this person too.
Yeah. And so
that's what I'm saying. That's like, you're not normal.
Yeah.
Like I have always been this person too. Like I have always my whole life like kind of called myself like a professional fangirl.
Yeah.
Because when I like something, I like it.
Yeah.
Like I don't just kind of sort of like something. And so like, yeah, I did the same thing with like my favorite actor when I was younger was Josh Hutcherson.
Yeah.
And I literally owned every single film that he was ever in. And like this kid was a child actor, so there was a lot. And there was a lot where he had like a 1-bit like half line or whatever in.
Yeah.
You better believe I tracked it down and had it on DVD. So like, and I actually still have all of them.
Amazing.
Because why would I give up that collection? It took so long to build.
Yeah.
But so like, again, I don't think normal people approach it that way. So I really don't think that people are going to like, again, because we would have seen a bump for He's Coming to Me after this Bad Buddy craze.
Well, and also the interesting part about that is that I see this time and time again in the Discord, and the same thing happened with you, where when someone gets into BL, you go to the internet and are like, tell me what I should watch. And that's the interesting part about the culture around BLs, is that like, for the most part, even if you are someone who does deep dive, you're still asking around, like, what should I watch?
Right. Because what if you missed something?
Yeah.
So, anyways, let's go down the list, because actually I think this GMMTV list in terms of view counts, the ends should be swapped, but the middle actually kind of makes sense to me.
Also, you said that it didn't matter, but I think it truly does with the years where like A 3 Will Be Free came out 2 years ago, where Tanhan came out 1 year ago.
Well, no, what I'm saying is I don't think other people will take that into account. Like, I'm saying, like, it obviously impacts the view, like, the number of views, and it's going to change and fluctuate the longer it's been out.
Yeah.
But I don't, like, a normal person, again, a normal person
not normal.
that's just going to YouTube and, like, searching BL series isn't going to be like, well, this one has been out for 3 years, and this one has only been out for 1, and therefore these views are statistically higher. Like, normal people aren't doing that.
But in the conversation about view count, as far as, like, in the bigger question of like, do view counts matter, should they matter, it's like, well, there's no real actual like qualifier to the view counts, because you're approaching it at the time that you're approaching
you're approaching it at face value. And so like that's where they do matter. And there's also a second layer to why they matter, which we'll get into in a second.
So Surprisingly enough, Futz is one of my rewatches.
That is so interesting to me.
Because Neo Louis truly just
That
like
is perplexing
that
to me in so many different
that
ways.
storyline was just like the cutest thing you could have ever watched ever. And
I
they
don't know about all
stylized
that.
it really cute. I just really liked it.
I don't know about all that. Now, I love Ponpuin. Would die for Ponpuin.
You know what's interesting?
We'll always have Ponpuin.
Another show that's at the bottom of this list
But
is
we'll go through the list.
Okay.
Let's just go through it. What is the list?
Read the list.
Yeah.
Okay, so the top is Together. Do you want me to read how many views? No, it doesn't matter.
Let's just go through in order.
Dark Blue Kiss, Sodas,
Theory of Love.
I abbreviated and I don't always remember my abbreviations. Still Together, Sodas, Waterboy, Bad Buddy, Fish Upon the Sky, Tale of a Thousand Stars, Cause You're My Boy, Tanhan Chanlati, 3 Will Be Free, My Gear in Your Gown, and He's Coming to Me.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. I feel like that top chunk, apart from Together, makes so much sense to me.
Yeah, it's the pillars.
And also, like, honestly, like, Theory of Love is a good show. I've rewatched Theory of Love. I rewatched Dark Blue Kiss like probably once a month.
Yeah,
and my questions come into play when we started thinking about Waterboy. I have so many questions. About why this has so many views. I don't understand it, and I don't think it should even be on. I think it should have so few views that it's not even on the list.
I think
it shouldn't even be on YouTube anymore.
I think it has so many actors.
I don't understand. It makes whatever the opposite of sense is.
It's also like 5 years old. Like, that's another reason why.
So that's another outlier where I'm like, these view counts don't make sense and should not have any impact on the way you view things.
Also, the other thing that goes in hand with our conversation is we both finally watched Cause You're My Boy not too long ago. And we were both like, what? Like, why aren't more people talking about this?
Yes, why did no one tell me to watch this?
You know what's funny is that we haven't talked about it since. Like, we had a moment where we were like, Cause You're My Boy, we love this show.
And we were waiting, and we kept being like, we're going to do a series Sunday, and this is going to be a thing.
And it never happened.
Yeah, but we between each other bring it up a lot. Right? And we do frequently will be like, and everybody forgets that Puin and Neo were paired and that,
we reference it, but I don't feel it's not, of course, our current conversation is 100% just Sula.
But it's all,
But here's the thing is that, like, when you have conversation, you reference those pillars, you reference what currently is going on. And if you have these outliers, like, going completely off topic, but like in ingredients, like everyone's like, yes, ingredients is so underrated. And it is in the grand scheme of things, but like nobody is like championing it,
Yeah. The only other one on this GMMTV list that like I personally think should be at the top and that like this is one of the cases where like, again, view counts don't matter and this should be at the top of the list and you should like not even worry about how low, like the low views on this one, and you should just watch it and love it, is 3 Will Be Free.
Right.
But I will say I understand why it's so low on the list is because if you're a BL viewer, you typically are only looking for BLs.
Right.
Like, I can't remember the last time I watched a show at this point in my life that wasn't a BL, just to be completely honest with you. And every time 3 Will Be Free comes up, a debate sparks about whether or not it's a BL.
Yeah.
And so I think it makes sense to me that the view counts on that are low is because if you're a BL viewer and you're looking for strictly a BL, you might be like, well, this isn't a BL. Or you might see this debate about like, is it a BL? Is it not a BL? And be like, oh, okay, well, I'm not even going to bother with it.
We've had that conversation a lot lately. I feel like somebody needs to define what a BL is.
It always gets brought up that like, is it a BL? Is it a BL? And then, like we've had 3 actors that we've talked to, when we bring up BL to them and we like talk to them about it, that have asked us, do we consider Call Me By Your Name a BL? And every time we're like, I don't know. Every time we don't have a good answer for them.
I almost say I don't consider anything that isn't Asian because
But
of just
why?
like the origins
because
of
the
that
origin?
genre.
Interesting.
And because traditionally yaoi, which is where BL came from,
Right.
was created by it was created for women.
Right.
But a lot of times by women, but mostly created for women. And so if you look at it with that frame of reference, in the West, like they aren't created
They
for
aren't
women.
created for women.
Yeah.
Right. But like, should that be the frame of reference?
No.
I don't think it should.
No.
Like, I don't think, was this created for a specific gender identity? I don't think that should be a consideration when we decide what's a BL and what isn't a BL. Because quite frankly, like, it actually, I don't think any of these shows should be created for any one gender identity. Like, period. I don't think that should enter into the conversation.
I'm just thinking about a conversation we had recently with somebody who also
every
said
time,
that.
Beth Ann.
I'm so sorry. Y'all stay tuned for March. So yeah, the conversation around BL in general is interesting.
But so that's why 3 will be free. Actually, even though I disagree with the view count, I think it makes sense to me as to why it is where it is.
And you know what? I really loved My Gear in Your Gown, and people,
I could take it or leave it.
Yeah.
That's how I felt about it.
I was a big fan of Fiat and his little storyline.
I love Fiat, and I liked the show.
Yeah,
but I'm not like,
like
it's not a He's Coming to me.
That's a show that like I remember the storyline pretty vividly.
Yeah, I don't. I remember there's like a deal or no deal scenario kind of situation.
Right. Like I more so remember the side couples in that show. Okay, so let's go on to, since we talked about GMMTV, also like mentioning like the R Sky episodes, because people forget about the R Sky episodes.
And it is interesting because, again, you were the one that was pulling all these up, and you asked me, you were like, who do you think is the least viewed versus the most viewed?
Yeah.
And like, honestly, I forgot that one of these couples even had an R Sky, and I was like, oh yeah, it makes sense to me that they're so low, is because I forgot they even had one.
But the craziest part is that Drake Frank is the lowest view count. They don't even have 1 million views.
That makes sense to me. I forgot they even had one.
And you remembered Plume Chimin?
No, I didn't remember Plume Chimin, but I remember like Drake. Like, what was weird about me not even remembering that Drake Frank had one is that I do really like, because you're my boy, and I do really like Drake and Frank, and I like Drake Frank as a couple, and I really like Drake, and I really like Frank, right? Like, I like them separately, I like them as a couple. I have watched everything they've ever been in, and I forgot they even had an R Sky.
Drake is wilding right now in the shows.
Isn't Drake always wildin'? Like, isn't that just his general personal brand?
They always give him like the most scandalous lines.
His general personal brand is like wildin'. I feel like he's almost like a baby Nicki, where they don't really give him a script. They're just like, can you show up and be Drake?
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I'll take my pants off in front of Joss.
Yeah.
So of course with the R Sky episodes, Off Gun is number 1, but significantly below them is Taenu. Or
no,
Chris Singto. And then significantly below them is Taenu, and then Plume Chimin and Drake Frank.
Yeah.
Which I don't even know did Plume Chimin even have? They did have, but maybe I didn't research well enough. What was their show that they did? Hold on. I'm going to have to research this because...
In the middle of recording. I mean... Is it going to drive you crazy? Can we move on?
Yeah, you can move on, but I need to figure out what show.
You need to figure out right in the middle of recording.
We do. And of course, I'm like not going to...
You're not even using official sources.
Hold on. Oh, okay. So this is what it was. I guess Chimin and Plume got established in My Dear Loser, and they were just a side couple. That's why it's confusing. Because when I was trying to look up a list of GMMTV BLs, the people kept listing shows that had side couples. And like Nanon is in My Dear Loser, but it's Bad Buddy was his first BL.
Right.
But everyone's always like Blacklist and like all these other shows that like had side characters that were gay, but like they weren't BLs.
Right.
So anyways, moving on. Okay, let's talk about End of Love.
Yeah, End of Love.
And Wabi Sabi just in general.
I think that... Should, based on our current opinions of Wabi Sabi, should we talk about Wabi Sabi in general?
Listen,
is this a door we want to open?
Yeah, they're there. I mean, I feel like it's our brand. We accept all opinions.
So End of Love is crazy because I'm going to say something that will be very radical, particularly for me, because like we all know how I feel about war and my war agenda. Like truly, war is always my ultimate, my number one, my go-to. Like this.
You fall asleep at night thinking about his face.
I mean,
do you though?
I mean,
I think Sua's taking that place.
It depends on sweet Sua. This is not a conversation about Sua.
It always comes back to Sua.
I'm so sorry if you're wearing headphones. I literally just screamed that.
I sent you photos today of gummies that were in the shape of a tiger.
I probably shouldn't talk about my current camera roll. It's problematic. The camera roll on my phone is just like problematic at the moment. But War is always my ultimate. He's a number one. He's my go-to. He's my dude. War is my dude. And here's what's funny. Again, this is not like about who is Ayla like weirdly obsessed with, but like War and Sue are actually very similar if you think about it. Because the main reason that I liked War in the first place is I was like, he's funny. Yeah, I was like, he's weird and he's funny and I like it.
True.
Like I liked his personality from the beginning. I was like,
he has a good personality.
Yes. Like I was watching Missing Baby and I was like, no, he's actually so funny though. Like his like. And so yes, War and Sue are actually like astoundingly similar.
Okay, continue.
Anyways, so what I'm gonna say about End of Love is like shocking based on how hard I simp for War.
Yeah.
I actually don't think End of Love is underrated. I think it has the exact right amount of praise.
I disagree because I think This Is Love Story is truly one of the most epic BLs of all time because
This Is Love Story is so creepy. I'm so sorry. It's so weird.
The fact that Prom can deliver the lines that he was given in that show with like the serious face and that Benz can then give it right back to him. Like Benz and Prom. I mean, we know that Prom is an excellent actor because right now he's doing ship work that he created out of nothing and is like fully getting brand deals.
They're friends. Maybe they want to kiss.
It is wild.
Shout out Maxine.
I think about Prom Mark on a regular basis. Just because that's very perplexing to me. I'm just confounded.
Don't understand.
I think about a lot of things.
But yeah, I personally think End of Love gets the exact right amount of
So Tasara from End of Love has the least views.
And Tasara's Folk Win, who are still doing ship work.
Which is wild.
Which is so weird.
Also, Win is besties with Win from My Gear and Your Gown, which is really funny to me too.
Which is not Win Meta Win.
No.
There are 800 wins.
There are 800. All the actors have very similar names.
There's multiple guns.
Multiple Earths.
Yeah,
because somebody on Twitter recently was like, Fluke is not a common name. And I'm like, there's like 5 actor Flukes.
There's 3?
I don't know. There's a lot.
But yes, so Tasara is the least viewed, which honestly, that's really good because I don't need anyone else to suffer through that stage confession. Like 100p is a skip.
Yeah.
Well, I would watch it to get the Yin War establishment, actually.
You're true.
I'd watch it for War.
Well, and
here's the problem with End of Love. We talk about this all the time. People watch this out of order.
Yeah. Because there's nobody tells
because
you
if
what
you search
order.
End of Love Mechanics comes up because of course in the End of Love series
it's the most popular.
Love Mechanics is most popular.
Yeah, I watched it in order of popularity. That's interesting. There you go.
See, do view counts matter and should they?
Situation.
Because for End of Love, actually it does a disservice to you as a viewer because it actually does the story makes the most sense if you watch it in order.
Yeah.
And This Is Love Story becomes infinitely less creepy if you watch it in order.
Yeah. True. Another one that is highly underrated, but that I now have mixed feelings about, Ingredients. And you know what's interesting about Ingredients?
The fact that you just admitted that you have mixed feelings about Ingredients is wild to me.
I will fully support Jeff and Gameplay in everything that they do. But I'm okay with Jeff Gameplay not being a thing anymore. I'm so sorry. But here's the thing is that like ingredients as a show is solid. But what's interesting about it is that each episode is like the first episode is like 5 minutes long.
Right.
And then it goes on. And I think the most amount of time is like 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes.
It's a very short show.
It's a very short show. I watched it in a day. Like I vividly remember.
You can rewatch it in a day. And I rewatch Ingredients like semi-regularly. I do rewatch Ingredients.
Yeah. And so it's interesting that it doesn't, because the first episode doesn't even have 1 million views.
That is so wild. And here's the other reason is I feel like I hear people talk about Ingredients a lot.
Yes.
Like this is a very highly conversed show.
Yeah.
But it is the view counts on it are so crazy low.
Yeah. The the show that for sure has the least amount of views, some of the least amount of views, and rightly so, is Nidaman.
Oh, poor sweet Nidaman.
But
I agree. I think this is a case where view counts are indicative of the quality of the show. Just out of curiosity, and I feel like anybody listening to this is probably about to laugh, where did Golden Blood come in terms of views?
Good question.
Because like the only thing like, okay, again, this is not about shading a show or shading an actor or shading anything, but like if you think about the conversation around shows and do the view counts matter?
Yeah.
The conversation about Golden Blood, in my experience, is pretty universally negative.
But here's what's funny. A Golden Blood is very similar to what's happening with Gen Y season 2. I finished Golden Blood just because I was hate watching it. I was like, I didn't even finish Nidaman, I don't think, or at least I tried to block it out of my brain.
Yeah, I didn't finish Waterboy and I definitely tried to block it out of my brain.
I think I survived Nidaman just for Kawana Turbo, because like it was the first show that I was getting them together. I love them. So Golden Blood has on episode 1 has 2.1 million views.
Feels high, but no, actually it doesn't, because
people were pumped.
I remember people were so excited about it.
The last episode has.
Yeah, and so that's another interesting thing that we're like not really talking about on this episode is the drop between episode 1 and then following episodes. So like people drop off when it comes to watching these shows.
Yeah, it about halves. Like everybody halves.
Is that true of Bad Buddy, I wonder?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I looked at all of them.
Fascinating.
And I wonder how many people picked Bad Buddy back up at episode 5.
I mean, if you did that, all you're doing is a disservice to yourself. Because,
true, but like
that
you
show's
also
a masterpiece from start to finish.
True, but you also don't need the first 4 episodes necessarily.
I disagree.
For the couple. Like it was
disagree.
more so just like an establishment.
I disagree.
I mean, I disagree too, but I fully understand.
You get that? No, because the first 4 okay, this is not about Bad Buddy.
So Golden Blood ends with 1.1 million, which still is legit for.
Interesting. Honestly, it's just fascinating because again, if we're talking about do view counts matter and what is the conversation and like all of this stuff, like I feel like the only conversation I heard around Golden Blood, and I did not watch Golden Blood because the conversation was always negative.
Yeah. So a lot of these one-off shows that are not GMMTV shows have like around like 1 to 3 million views. Nothing is exceptional.
Right.
Nothing is even close to Together.
Right.
Like Together is something so exceptional. And so like A Lovely Writer had 3 million views, which I don't know, kind of seems low.
That feels low for, at the time, it was really widely talked about, but Lovely Writer is another one where I feel like not a lot of people go back and rewatch it.
I go back and rewatch it.
You rewatch Lovely Writer?
I do. I start rewatches, but I watch literally every show as it comes out, and I watch K-dramas and other shows, and so like I got a lot on my plate, so I don't do a lot of rewatching.
Yeah. See, when I again, this is like my personality type. When I love something, I love something.
Yeah. Another one is that I always get confused because of Bad Engineer,
which is the fake show in Lovely Writer.
Yeah. My Engineer has 2.4 million views, which is like, again, average for those one-off shows.
Solid, yeah.
However, so this is interesting. Together with Me, the first episode is not on YouTube.
Right.
The second episode is through TV Thunder, and it has, again, middle of the road views. But Together with Me, the next chapter came out 3 years ago and still hasn't hit 1 million.
Right.
Which is understandable.
I feel like tracks for the conversation around the show.
Yeah.
Because again, like, if the question is, should view counts impact your decision as a viewer to watch a BL? Because a lot of us are relatively new fans. A lot of us are not, but a lot of us are.
Right.
And we've discussed this. BL time doesn't make sense.
Right.
Because especially when you get into BL, you're just trying to consume anything and everything. And you're like, give it to me. And it could have come out last week or it could have come out 5 years ago.
Right.
It makes no difference to you.
Yeah.
And so if the question is, should you consider a view count when you're making your list or choosing your next show to watch? And like, based on this conversation, I think it's about half and half, but I think the answer really is maybe don't only rely on the fan group, on the singular fan group that you've stumbled across.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it very, very deeply impacts what you know about. Right? Like, do you even know? Like, I didn't even know 'Cause You're My Boy existed until I personally decided I liked Drake.
Right.
Like, I watched A Tale of a Thousand Stars and I was like, okay, fine, you got me. I was like, got me on this one, boys.
Yeah.
And I went and did research into Drake and I was like, hold on.
Yeah.
I was like, he did something before Together.
Right.
And then that was how I found, but I didn't even know that show existed because the fan group that I had found, the community that I was in, didn't talk about it.
Well, and think about the shows that are being made, right? Like, if the view counts on Together are as high as they are, then they're like, oh, a Together works, so let's make things that are similar.
Right. And so this is where view counts do matter in the sense that you should throw your views behind, and we talked about this a little earlier today, and I was like, ooh, I don't know if I should say this on the podcast, but like, you should throw your views behind shows that you think are quality, not necessarily that have the most conversation around them. And this is why we need to get away from things like hate watching stuff, because everybody keeps complaining that Pod doesn't have a ship and Pod doesn't have a show and Pod and Pod and Pod.
Yeah.
But here's why. What are the view counts on Tanhan? What are the view counts on his episodes with Gawain in Dark Blue Kiss? I can tell you they're lower, right? And so like, that's why, is because when these companies are looking at making these shows, you're exactly right. Together has 25 million views on the first episode alone. Can you imagine the ad revenue that brought in, that it continues to bring in?
Yeah, they're still releasing the movie.
So of course they're going to push Brightwin. And of course they're going to make more BLs like that. And of course, because these BLs cost money to make. And so you need to get a return on your investment.
Because like the Bad Buddy of it all, like this is what's so funny about kind of how Bad Buddy ended, is that like Pete Off was the one that pushed the Bad Buddy of it all. Pete Off was the one who was like, no, we need more affection in this show. No, we need these two boys specifically in this show. Like, he was the one that championed all the groundbreaking stuff that we got in Bad Buddy, and Bad Buddy tanked in Thailand
initially. Right? Like, so initially the viewership and the ratings on Bad Buddy on Thai TV, like just on television, were low,
and even on YouTube. Like those, it didn't hit 1 million for a very long time.
Right.
And so it is interesting, the conversation around like, yeah, if you want certain shows to be made, like you need to show what those shows are.
The companies need to get a return on their investment, quite frankly, is like the fact of the matter of it all. And I will say GMMTV was very smart with Bad Buddy in that they realized, like, they looked at those demographics on those views and they realized this is a hot show with international viewers specifically.
Right.
And so they started throwing them to Brazil and they threw them to the Philippines and they threw them to weirdly us. Like, we don't understand it either. Please stop asking us because we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. We literally do everything everybody else does. We don't do anything special.
Please, we don't know. But like the answer is because GMMTV is smart. GMMTV knew this is a show that hits with international audiences.
Yeah.
And so we need to promote within this international audiences. And so if you as a viewer want to see more of those shows being made,
Right.
throw your power behind it.
Yeah.
Right? Like throw your views behind it. And that counts not only on YouTube, it actually is like really, really important for the next piece of our discussion, which is like, these are all view counts on YouTube, but how do views impact Viki or IQIYI or Gaga Ooh La La, right? All
Yeah.
of these other streaming platforms that are now sort of like filling this space.
Yeah.
Because we can't publicly see the view count.
You see it on Viki, I feel like, with kind of they have thrown their weight behind BLs.
They have bought up a lot of BLs, and like I razz them a little bit on their social captions because whoever is writing their sweet, sweet BL social captions is just like sweet, you sweet summer child. But
well, and I told you this too. And what's wild is that if you look at the conversation on Viki's social, people are not happy.
Right. The larger Viki audience is actually not pleased that there are BLs on Viki.
Yeah, which is important to watch shows. Again, we talk about this constantly. Watch shows legally, watch them where you can get them. A lot of the Viki shows are free, so you don't necessarily have to have
it's on like standard license.
Yeah. And so it's so interesting that they are throwing their weight behind BLs because, you know, they're smart.
Well, and here's the thing, Netflix is predicted to have a much higher vested interest in BLs in the coming year and years.
Yeah.
And so we're likely to see a lot more BLs start getting picked up on Netflix, right? Because we had a little smattering, and it's almost like they were pulling like a Mike Chris Safe House on us where they were like A/B testing us.
Yeah.
And it worked. Netflix is now predicted, like if you pay attention to like the larger media conversation and like the media landscape, Netflix is predicted to be much more vested in BLs in the coming years.
I mean, that's how I watched Sodas.
Right.
I only got Sodas because it was on Netflix.
Yeah.
I would not have watched that show any other way.
And so it's really important, particularly when we talk about Viki, about how like there is conversation on Viki comments about how like the larger Viki audience is not happy that there are BLs on Viki.
Right.
And so the only way to make sure that BLs keep going to Viki is to actually watch them on Viki.
Right.
So like watch them the day they come out and then rewatch them. Right. Like
especially with the Korean ones because they're so short.
They're so short.
Yeah. I've rewatched all of the Korean ones.
And here's the other thing I'll say about Viki. Viki has good taste in the BLs they're bringing on.
Gosh, especially now with the Koreans. The Koreans have like ramped it up with like the
But even the Thai ones that they're choosing, and then Viki has always been like basically, if you're in the States, the outlet for the Taiwanese BLs. Viki and WeTV has kind of like been half and half.
Yeah.
So like honestly, Viki has good taste in what they're picking up. Like I gotta say the quality is peak.
Yeah. Yeah, the availability, because that was the other question I had. I was like, how are people finding BLs? Because like, are you just going to YouTube to search these things? Or are you going to a website? Because that's what I did when I first got into BLs, because I didn't have a Discord. I didn't have anybody that I knew. I went to Google and was like, what were the shows that I need to be watching?
I think it's a lot of YouTube and Netflix, because that's the number one thing I get when I like, I have a podcast and it's about this thing and blah, right? Like, and so like I was telling my friend Michael, and he was like, I really need you to make me this list. He was like, because I had told him like a while ago I'd make him a BL list, and he was like, give me the list. And I kind of had to tell him, I was like, well, it's kind of hard because you only want to watch things that are on YouTube or Netflix, because he's flat out told me, he was like, give me a Netflix list.
Oh,
and I was like, well, there's not that many on Netflix. And he was like, okay, YouTube.
Yeah.
So like it does have to do with availability. Like I think we forget because we're K-drama viewers.
Go suggest Itzy to Netflix. I do that regularly.
Yeah, Itzy would be great. You know what else would be great on Netflix? You're My Sky really would be great on Netflix.
Yeah.
Like the aesthetic. And again, this is where like your view count shouldn't impact you as a viewer as to what you watch.
Yeah.
But I think we all need to understand that our view counts matter.
Yeah.
And so again, like, we all have this conversation about, like, why are there not more Itzays? Why are there not more Itzays? And
Right.
it's like, well, actually, there is another Itzay, and it's called You're My Sky, and nobody's watching it. And it's really frustrating for
And it's
me.
funny because, like, you say that, but, like, the conversation on Vicky comments, because I did read the Vicky comments because obviously I'm obsessed with the show. And so all the Vicky comments were like, this is as close to Itsy as you can get right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, and people talk all the time about how, like, nobody does like Itsy, and Itsy was so aesthetic, and Itsy is so well made, and, like, all, which is all true.
Yeah.
It's all absolutely valid. Like, I agree. Itsy is a masterpiece.
Itsy
It
is not
is
accessible.
beautifully made.
Yeah.
It, like, I have said time and time again that the filmographer on that show, I think is a bona fide genius. Also a musical genius.
Yes, yes.
But again, like, there's all this conversation behind, like, we need more BLs like this and
Yeah.
made like this and with such high production value. And so,
Go watch You're My Sky.
I mean, it exists. Like, I guess that's what I'm saying is it exists, but we, like, you need views behind them if you want them to get made. And so,
Right.
like, You're My Sky is certainly not the only example. It's just, like, my most beloved example. Right? Like, but it's certainly not the only example of this, like, really, really incredible, like, filmmaking and aesthetic and, like, high quality BL that we, quite frankly, all complain that we want.
I'll be interested to see if and when Netflix does get more BLs, where they'll come from.
Right.
Because, like, Game Boys was on Netflix, and that was only probably to the credit of Percy.
Again, yes, this is such a
having a
bigger
relationship
conversation.
with
I was
them.
about to say that. This is a way bigger conversation that deserves its own episode, but, like, I highly suggest you go and listen to our interview with Percy and Elijah from Game Boys.
Right.
Because Percy Intalan, who is the executive producer of Game Boys, co-founder of Idea First Company, which made Game Boys, as soon as you learn his background, it makes 1,000,000% sense that Game Boys made its way to Netflix.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like, part of this conversation does have to do with, like, the infrastructure around BLs.
Right.
And, like, the smarts of the behind the scenes people. Like, I will just, like, and not even the smarts, but, like, the experience and the infrastructure. And so, like, you have people who are very, very smart who are coming at it with a certain level of expertise in the Western market.
Right.
And that is why they're landing on these specific platforms.
Yeah.
It's all very interesting. And, like, producers deserve more of a spotlight because, like, that is a very interesting and difficult job.
For sure. And yeah, it will be interesting to see now that the conversation is slowly starting to change and fans do want more quality. It'll be interesting to see. And they are going to streaming services, right? Like, you do have WeTV, you do have IQIY, you have Viki, you have Gaga Ulala, you have all these streaming services who are having to invest in these shows to bring people to their platform to buy subscriptions, because most of them are behind paywalls. And so the only reason they're going to invest in more and give more money to people is,
right,
view count.
So it's this, like, double-edged sword where it's like the view count shouldn't matter for you as a viewer, but also you need to understand how much your view count does matter. So, like, the view counts do matter, but they don't. Right. And it's all very, like,
and
it's
the
a
social
very
media
intricate system.
Well, and the conversation matters even more so on social media, right? Like, you see it with Love Stage, for example. Like, the conversation around Love Stage leading up to Love Stage was very international. And that's why people were so angry when it wasn't available internationally, because people were so confused why it felt pushed internationally, but it wasn't available internationally.
But that has to do with who's excited about what show again. And this is, like, the bad buddy conundrum of it all.
Right.
Right. And so, like, it's fascinating. The dynamics behind the world of BL and, like, the way that we as viewers consume it and the actual power that we have is, like, pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all, the world feels very small the more you get into it. because the connections too.
I mean, like Jump knows Mix. It's like
I know. And Ohm.
And Ohm. Yeah, Jump knows Ohm Pawat.
Yeah. And Boom was at GMMTV. We've gone down this route. So yeah. Watch the shows. Watch the shows that you love.
Watch the shows and seek out the shows that your group of fans / friends are maybe not talking about.
Yeah.
Because again, like we champion the moment I need you in the moment since like I would say if
I want more Bank Pond on my screen.
Right. If somebody asked me what's the most underrated BL, like what should I watch that nobody else is watching, like that is the title I would give them.
That's the go-to.
But there are probably 5 BLs that I have never heard of that another group of fans talk about all the time, right? That's their go-to suggestion.
Yeah.
And so like I'm not even saying that like we are the end all in BL, right? Like I'm not saying just listen to Let's Talk BL.
Right.
Like I think everybody needs like your worldview and your like BL worldview should be super expanded because again, it's like I didn't even know 'Cause You're My Boy existed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
agree.
Do the thing. So the answer to the question of do view counts matter? Yes and no.
Yeah.
On one hand, yes. On the other hand, no.
Yeah. Your view count matters, but whether or not you see view counts doesn't matter.
Right.
Anyways, we have merch.
We have merch. And
thank you for buying it.
Like people are buying it at an astounding rate.
Yeah. So, and there's good stuff. And of course there's stock issues.
We know that there's some stuff out of stock. I guess the disclaimer is we can't control that. There's like global supply chain issues. So we know that certain colors are out in certain sizes and we are trying to restock those as quickly as humanly possible
for you guys.
Right. We wanted to pick an affordable but high quality base brand. And also we like felt very strongly about choosing a brand that had a complete size range.
Yeah.
So a size range that didn't end at large or XL and a size range that didn't just start at small.
Right.
So like the base brand that we have chosen, there are global supply chain issues. And that means some colors of some things are out of stock. We can't control it. They will be back in stock as soon as we can make them back in stock.
And stay tuned for March, y'all. It's going to be wild.
If you made it this far, I don't know. Let's drop hit number 2. What was it? We didn't even really drop a hint in Series Sunday, but so many people DM'd us. And I was surprised. I was like, y'all made it that far in that Series Sunday.
It's so true. It's so true. Thank you for listening.
So thanks for making it that far.
I mean,
because we didn't even drop a legit hint last time. We were just like, it's a boy. And people were like, okay.
We mentioned their show on this list.
We did. The person is in a show that was on this list. That's true. Accurate.
I can't wait. We have William next month.
William's coming back. Fun. Yes, that's not officially announced, but it kind of is. We asked for questions. Y'all knew he was coming. He is very cute. He dressed up for you. So watch it on YouTube. Don't listen on do both. Listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Well,
because you get videos on Podcast. On
Podcast.
Oh my god.
Spodcast. Everyone listen to Let's Talk BL on Spodcast.
We should start a platform. On Spotify, you can watch this podcast because we have video podcasts, which is very cool. Makes Ayla do more work. So sorry. But,
so we have merch.
My
Watch Your My Sky. Stan Cyberbully Chris. This has been Let's Talk BL. We'll see you next time.